Excellent. Okay, thank you. My name is Brad Waldschmidt. I'm an engineer with who works with the Nashville Department of Transportation on the traffic calming program. We're grateful to be here at the Southeast Community Center. We have about 5 people who are here in person, and I think about 5 people who've called in on WebEx. So for those in person, if you see me with my earpiece, it's because we have a few people that are calling in, some, so they can hear as well. And before we get going on talking about traffic calming on Asheford, Drace, and Shagbark Trail, I want to make sure we kind of introduce my fellow colleagues. I'll let Dylan and then Kiralos introduce yourself. Dylan, can you introduce yourself first?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, thank you, Dylan. And then Kiralos, can you introduce yourself?
Carlos and Addie. I'm interning this summer at Canoe Horn, and it's the first project that they've allowed me to help with, and I'm glad that people are reaching out, so we can make it safer for people that are traveling. And then
Excellent. Before we get going, I want to ask the people again on the WebEx, can someone come off of mute and make sure you can still hear me and that you can see the title slide on the presentation before we get going?
Yes, I'm able to hear you, and I can see the title slide.
Okay, great. Just wanted to confirm before we get going here. So I really appreciate everybody coming out. We're going to give about a 15-minute presentation on the neighborhood street traffic calming program, talking about Asheford, Trace, and Shagbark Trail. I want to talk about some of the solutions that we could do to slow down traffic on your street. We've even prepared some concept designs. They're by no means the final answer. We just want to put something kind of initially to kind of show what a traffic calming design could look like, and then sort of the opportunity you'll have in the future to be able to vote for whether you want this traffic calming project to happen. So that's kind of what I want to go through. We'll have a lot of time for questions and answers and discussions. So what I'd like to ask everybody a couple of things. First is if you do have some questions, if you could wait till the end of the 15-minute presentation, that'd be great. We can have lots of dialogue. If you're on the WebEx, if you could also wait till the end, or if you'd like to be able to chat, I think in the bottom right corner of the WebEx, you can type a question or comment in the chat anytime, and we'll be able to moderate that at the end as well and get to that. Then we have 5 people in person, 5 people on WebEx. Sometimes we do get questions both. I'll try to manage that the best I can there at the end. So what is traffic calming? Well, traffic calming is the program where we're looking at residential streets like Ashford Trace and Shagbark Trail, trying to reduce the vehicle speeds along that entire section of that road that we're looking at. We also like to focus on the 3 E's of traffic calming. The first is education, with this meeting being a wonderful example of education. We as the engineers can educate on some traffic calming solutions, but you are the experts of your street because this is where you live. So you can educate us. So together we make a really good team when we're educating each other on how to solve the speeding problem. The second D is enforcement. Enforcing the posted speed limit is absolutely part of traffic calming. Very important. It is not something the Nashville Department of Transportation has a lot of jurisdiction over. So while it's important, absolutely, it's not one that NDOT can do much about, but NDOT can do something about this 30, which is the engineering, doing something to the roads and the streets to encourage slower vehicle speeds. This idea of safety and a vision of 0 deaths on our streets is a big reason why the Nashville Traffic Calming Program is funded. If you look at the far left, if the unfortunate crash happens where a pedestrian is hit by a moving vehicle and that moving vehicle is going at 25 miles per hour, that pedestrian has an 89% chance of surviving it. But if you look at the far right, that same car is going 45 miles per hour and hits a pedestrian, that pedestrian has a 35% chance of survival. Now, we at NDOT, we don't want any pedestrians getting hit by any cars, but if the unfortunate thing does happen, we want speeds to be as slow as possible, closer to the 25 mile per hour. Hey, come on in, welcome. Excellent, got a few more people walking in, that's great. But this is one reason why traffic calming slowing speeds is so important. to increase the chances of survival if the unfortunate thing happens where a pedestrian's hit by a moving vehicle. So the neighborhood traffic calming program, any citizen can apply for their street to be considered. Back in August, over 500 streets have been applied for across Nashville. And the streets we're talking about today were 2 of the 85 that were chosen. Normally there's not that many, but Nashville put more funding because they know how important safety is and traffic calming is. So Asheford Trace and Shagbark Trail were 2 of the 85 streets that were selected. So that's why we're here, because they were the ones that were applied for, and through some of the criteria, they got chosen. We do like to make sure people know about Hub Nashville. Hub Nashville, you can call 311, or you can go online to hub.Nashville.gov. This is a great way to report something you feel like the city needs to know about. It could be if you think there need to be more stop signs, or if a traffic signal is doing something you don't think it should be doing, or if there's a huge pothole, or if there are down tree limbs in the road, anything you feel like there's an issue and the city needs to know about. We like to make sure everyone's aware of this Hub Nashville tool. But if it's about traffic calming, we are your team, myself and Dylan and Corrales. So we got you covered here tonight for traffic calming. We like to make sure everybody, for anything else, that everyone knows about this wonderful tool. So we mentioned over 500 applications. Every street that comes in and gets applied for, we collect data and we analyze. And we figure out which streets probably need traffic calming the most. We look at all these things: how fast are cars going, how many cars, are there sidewalks, are there parks or schools, have there been pedestrians hit or killed on the street. We look at all of these things because we think those are the most important streets that we should focus on traffic calming. And so back in August, Asheford Trace and Shagbark Trail were 2 of those streets that were determined, hey, we need to look at this and do something about it. So here is what we're focused on. I know Asheford Trace is a little longer, Shagbark Trail is a little longer. We look at the segments that were applied for. So Asheford Trace, we're looking at Mountain View Road to Murphy Wood Crossing. And then Shagbark Trail, we are looking at Asheford Trace to Summercrest Trail. I believe that was in the application. So those are the segments. We're not doing like the full streets. Those were the application ports. That's what we're looking at. Yeah, we'll have a map too, so we can make sure we got our bearings right. And then when we do collect data on all 500 plus streets, the bottom part of this slide shows some of the data we collected, so you can see how many cars per day drive on Asheford Trace compared to Shagbark Trail. You can also see things like how wide the street is, and then how fast. 85th percentile speed is one that us traffic engineers look at. It's not average speed, it's 85th percentile. It's a statistical speed we look at when we're looking at speeds on streets. I believe these counts may have been done in late 2022 or early 2023. So, gotcha. So you're saying now you're seeing the speeds be even faster? Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, sounds like speeds have gone up. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're here to talk about these 2 streets. So this is a map that represents what we just talked about. Here we got Asheford Trace from Mountain View here to, I believe, Murphywood. I believe Murphywood is the always stop. So that's the section we're looking at, because I think that was what was in the application. And then Shagbark Trail, we're looking at Asheford Trace here to Summercrest Trail. So just wanted to make sure everyone kind of knows the sections of these 2 streets that we're looking at. I'll probably repeat this later, but I want to make sure these are 2 separate projects, and so we're grouped them together because they're so close, and we thought we just kind of have this meeting with both streets. But they are going to be 2 separate projects. They're not one big project. They're 2 separate, and we'll get to why that's important in a minute when we talk about the voting. So just want to make sure everybody kind of knows that. But that's what we're looking at. So let's talk about our toolkit of things that we could do to try to reduce vehicle speeds on these streets. The first is one of the more common ones on Nashville and the Nashville streets when it comes to traffic calming, these speed cushions. They are rubberized devices at their highest height, they're about 3 inches off the pavement. Your cars have to drive over them. We can put them in multiple locations along the street. And you'll see that there's a bullet up there that says reduced impact to emergency response vehicles. I want to go to the next slide. And then we'll come back to that to kind of explain that. There's another option, speed tables. We don't do this as much. There's more material, it costs more. You'll see the speed tables, the difference between the cushions and the tables is the cushions have these gaps in between them. The tables, it goes a hole across the road, there's more material, costs more. All vehicles have to go over these speed tables the way they're designed. That includes emergency vehicles. So if you think about fire trucks or ambulances, when they may need to get somewhere pretty quickly to respond to an emergency, they're also going over these speed tables, which it'll slow their response time. I'm gonna go back to the speed cushions. So when comparing it to the tables, the reason these cushions have gaps is the front wheels of fire trucks and ambulances are wider, so they can straddle one of these speed cushions. That's why those gaps are there. Now, usually because there's so much weight in the back, usually there's extra tires, so they can't straddle as well on the back tires, but they're still going up some of like the side ramp parts of the speed cushion, which is still slowing them down a little less compared to a speed table. So that's what that kind of bullet means is compared to a speed table, there's a reduced impact. So that's why usually NDOT, we like to consider speed cushions instead of the tables. But this is a quick example of before and after studies that for speed cushions on the Nashville traffic calming program. Yeah, the speed cushions are the ones that kind of have the gaps. These are the more common ones that Nashville installs. But what Nashville and NDOT wanted to do is just sort of collect some data, and it's just proving that yes, before speed cushions there's higher speeds, after speed cushions there are lower speeds. And so that's some of the data that NDOT's done just to make sure we're seeing positive results. What's that? Yeah, so you mentioned less traffic. We definitely see reduction in vehicle speeds, which is our #1 priority to reduce the speeds. A secondary product of that could be a reduction in volumes, but that's not like our primary objective. But some cars may choose to drive elsewhere if they don't want to drive over these. The Summercrest Trail. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So yes, you have a question? Yes. Yes. So the question is, for those on the WebEx, with these speed cushions, can cars position themselves to run, I guess, between the gaps? The answer is no. And the reason is because when we're doing our design, we work to make sure that the gaps between the cushions are never wide enough where a car could actually go through. Now it's possible that like one wheel side could go through the gaps, absolutely, while the other one is kind of up on the speed cushion. That's absolutely possible. It's still going to have more of a speed reduction than just the smooth asphalt. But you're right, that is possible. So the radar feedback signs are another tool where the speed gets read out. And when someone's speeding, you see both of these are either at or below the posted speed limit. When someone's going faster, it either turns red or it flashes. Sometimes it's both. We've seen some positive results. Sometimes in the right location, these are effective, sometimes not. We do see mixed results with some of these. So they are a tool, and there are some designs where we feel like they're the right choice. So these are another thing that we use as well. And I would say these have their place. Sometimes they're a good use, sometimes they're not. Another option is when we haven't done our site visit yet. We will after this meeting in the next couple of weeks. But one thing we've noted is Asheford Trace is wider compared to Shagbark Trail. So both of these streets are Nashville. These are not your streets, but both of these streets used to not have those wide edge lines. And so the asphalt just seemed a lot wider. So the traffic calming program added the wide edge lines because, believe it or not, adding the white lines and narrowing an area where a driver thinks they're supposed to be driving can have a slowing result. it won't be as much of a speed cushion, but it can help. And we've seen some positive things by doing that narrowing. So that's something with the width of Ashford Trace, we may also look into when we do our measurements in our design. But that narrowing can have a good result on slowing speed some as well.
But it doesn't matter if school, they don't need the person back in their driveway or pulling their driveway, they're gonna go around. And you miss this all the time, they're impatient. So I don't know if the rest might do something for them, but if the person is coming out, I mean, three houses from Ashford Train, and if I'm coming out in the morning to go to work, and wanna go down to Ashford Train, the school zone control person is down at the end. Traffic is back all the way up to their house on the end. And the people are impatient, so they pull around and just go out on the side of the road. So it's definitely something I can do because we're not as wide as the train.
Sounds like speeding's a problem, and even backing out of driveways is a struggle. Well,
So how would you go about to the people? All the crowd just in the center.
yeah, so so one of the questions is basically how many speed cushions do we put down? So we always design the speed cushions. You'll see some pictures have 2, some pictures have 3. We've done some upwards where there's 5 on the street. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure there's no gaps big enough where a car can do something dangerous. So we don't know if you'll have something that's like 2 of those or 3 or 4 because we haven't done our measurements, but that's our objective, is to make sure we have enough cushions where cars have to go over them and they can't just try to go around or go through. So the speed tables, probably not. We're probably going to be going with the speed cushions. We're willing to hear if there's a desire for tables, but normally we want to do speed cushions because we can do more of them because there's less product and we see the benefits from the emergency vehicles. So that's one reason why we usually prefer the speed cushions, but we are willing to hear kind of feedback on that. Can I get to my concept design? I'm gonna answer all of it. I promise you. I promise you I will get to all of that. We got all, because we got some ideas we want to put in front of you, and then we can talk about how far apart or how close they are. Another option we have are bulb outs for when intersections are very, very wide. You just go to an intersection, there's all this pavement. Sometimes we will add the white pavement markings, not the crosswalks, but the white lines and the diagonal lines and those white flexible posts, just to kind of narrow how big the intersection is. Just so, again, kind of narrowing where the areas are for the cars. We have also sometimes done these chicanes, which is on the right side, where cars have to turn their steering wheel to stay in the lane. That turning of the steering wheel can help on, especially when there's wider pavement. That is another tool. And then we do sometimes also look at traffic circles. Roundabouts are much, much bigger. This is not a roundabout. It's a traffic circle that we can put in the middle of the intersection. So cars have to kind of go around it. Again, turning the steering wheel does cause slowing of cars. So what I want to do is demonstrate a concept design of what a design on Ashford Trace could look like. The next slide will be a Shagbark Trail one. So this is an example of what a traffic calming design could look like. If you see between the Mountain View Road signal and the Cedar Ash crossing always stop, we'd be proposing 1 speed cushion location. Back to your question about how far apart. We don't want to put these so close together that it's like being in a grocery store parking lot, but we also don't want to put them too far apart. We don't want to put people too far apart where the people that want to drive unsafe are going to still try to pick up speed and have that distance to do it. So yeah, so each C is one of those speed cushions. Again, we're not sure if it's like 2 or 3 or 4. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't know yet. But what we're going to do is each one of these C's is, we're going to make sure the speed cushions are enough where cars can't go around and try to cheat, for lack of a better word. And then between the Cedar Ash crossing, always stop and the Murphywood crossing always stop. If we only did one speed cushion between them, we feel like that distance might be too long. That's why we're initially thinking 2 locations of speed cushions. Yes, do you have a question? Okay, you live on Ashford Trace.
And motorcycle. Oh, it looks like perfect opportunity to get money for that. Because they go to the top on a regular basis. So is there anything that you can put that slow them down?
Right. So this gets back to the speed cushion versus the speed table. Is the speed cushions do leave those gaps. The benefit is that the emergency vehicles can get somewhere a little quicker. Honestly, the other side of that is motorcycles have that gap. And so whereas speed tables cost more, the motorcycles have to go over the speed tables, but so does an emergency vehicle like an ambulance or a fire truck. So there's truly is both sides of the coin when we're looking at it. Usually at NDOT, we do try to focus on the emergency vehicle thought. So we usually go with the speed cushions, knowing that those gaps will exist. That's usually what our design approach is. Does that answer the question okay?
In other words, you can't.
We could consider speed tables if NDOT, if we want to do something more expensive and possibly scale back on some other things, but usually we don't look for the tables because we want to prioritize the emergency vehicles.
Do y'all interchange them, like maybe the middle C being the table or table? I think that's what you call it.
Gotcha. No, we usually don't interchange. No, we usually don't interchange. And I would say the majority of designs in Nashville lately are more the cushions and not the tables. Yeah, this initial design, just kind of our initial thought. This is not final. Initial thought is for the speed cushions that would have the gaps. Yes. So that's the reason for the number you see here, where you don't want them too close, but we don't want them too far. We don't want people to be able to pick up speed. So this is the initial thought for Ashford Trace. Next slide is an initial traffic calming thought for Shagbark Trail, where we're proposing 2 locations between Ashford Trace and then Summercrest Trail, because that's the section we're looking at. Yes, you have a question. So the question is, can we add a 3rd location closer to Summercrest Trail? So you're pointing just to the east of the trail, Summercrest Trail.
The reason is this.
Yeah.
They would jump this one, and they will do a burnout all the way here.
Okay. Let's make a note of that. Okay. The table.
We can't tell what you're doing on the phone virtually.
Sorry, I got 4 people talking to me, including one in the ear. I'm sorry. So there's just some comments right now. Are you still able to? Whoever's on WebEx who just spoke up, thank you for commenting. Are you still able to see the Shagbark Trail concept design?
Yes.
Okay. So there are some comments in the room about, could there be speed tables instead of speed cushions? And there's also some comments on could there be possibly a 3rd location of speed cushions, kind of just past the purple end right there at Summercrest Trail, basically just on the other side of that intersection. Those are the questions that are being asked. Have I got that right? Kind of looking at the people. It's a long street.
It's not so much the street being long, but
It's not.
So like this is our house. The street inclines here.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they got those hot rods and the motorcycles and all that stuff, and they rev it up. And so you have nowhere to stop. I mean, they don't have to stop nowhere in here. There are no stop signs or anything. So if you put it before the turn here where the cul-de-sacs are, they're gonna, if a person wants to turn in there, they could get ramrodded real easy there or either go around them, which is what they do most cases. This one up here is just beyond this other cul-de-sac here. So the ground is, the street is pretty leveled up there, but still, like they're saying up here, they just take off when they get to the top of the hill. That's the top of the hill up there on that last thing.
Okay. So the feedback we've heard is that, sorry, could you repeat your comment? Two's not going to help?
Two cushions. It won't work. It would be ineffective.
At nighttime, they go like 70 miles an hour.
Can we take comments from the phone?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Comments on the phone. Could someone on the phone feel free to provide a question or comment, please?
I have a comment. I
Yes.
live on Shagbark Trail.
You live on Shagbark?
Yes. By the time they hit the corner at Asheford Trace, they're already in speed mode. By the time they hit that first hydrant, they're already 0 to 60.
So by the time they turn from Ashford Trace into Shagbark, they're already 0 to 60. That's the comment on the phone. I'm just repeating it for the people in the room. And you were getting lots of head nods saying agree. Yes.
Yes.
It's too much. I'm sorry. It's too much. I'm trying to listen still. Yes, ma'am.
If you give them enough time to rev up, it needs to be a cushion at the beginning of summer of Shagbark Trail coming
saying-
up the hill, but there also needs to be another cushion to keep them from revving up again because it is such a long street.
Gotcha. I think the comment
3 would be good.
I think the comment I'm hearing is 3. The person who's commenting would say 3, but basically where these two cushions are shown, moving them that way. So the first one is closer to Ashford Trace, perhaps moving this one a little bit. I think this is similar to what you were just saying. And then maybe we're adding a third up here. That's the comment I think I just got.
Yes.
Yeah, we're hearing an agreement in the room for what. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Another comment, yep. Okay. So definitely hear feedback. We can consider a third set. We will talk with NDOT about speed cushions versus speed tables. We hear your comment, and we want to talk with our team about that. We will look at possibly 3. Hearing some requests for 4. We're not making promises, but we're hearing requests for 4. We have our. Sorry, go ahead. No. Yeah, go.
Okay. And then during the day, you have to think about those babies. We need security to make sure that there's no safety patrol. There's no yield. There's no stop sign.
No stop sign, no safety.
You know, kids with their little backpacks running up this hill, and they're coming by the drones, and these cars are doing this, so they need to be stopped. I don't care. I live on the street.
Mm-hmm.
We will manage. We need more.
Okay.
We can get more. It's not safe for kids.
It's not safe for kids.
There's not a crosswalk. They get the kids come up when they get out of school, right there at Warning side, and when they get off the bus right there, and the car behind it, I'll be out there hollering, "Oh, please!" So you see that daughter,
Right.
on Warning side, you can't see down Shagbark, and that's right where the kids.
Well, this is why we like to put a concept design in front of you to hear this feedback. Again, back to that first E, education. So this is why we're so grateful for these meetings, so we can get educated. When we do our measurements and prepare a more final design. Yes, you have a question in the room. Yes. So yeah, our previous, we were showing a proposed location for Ashford Trace speed cushions. So this is Ashford Trace from Mount View Road to Murphywood Crossing all-way stop. Initially, kind of like Shagbark Trail, our concept showed 2. We've heard some good feedback. Initially for Ashford Trace, we're thinking 3. We still got to do our measurement and design. You would not be mad at 4 on Ashford Trace. Okay.
You need one.
Yes, yes, sir.
Shagbark Trail. Because when they get to the stop sign, there's a stop sign that says stop,
Yep.
but they will not stop.
No, you're
So-
correct.
They'll have to stop, keep from running the trail.
I think that was a similar comment, maybe moving that speed cushion closer to the stop sign.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that was similar to the person on the phone. Yep.
Police used to sit there, stop sign, before we had a short.
Okay.
They go straight through that. They would just get ticket after ticket. So that's how bad it is on Ashford Trail.
Right.
I remember that. I remember.
Right. Yes, yes.
Years back, I was involved with our homeowner association, and we had the same conversation, and we were really trying to get it taken care of. Well, our association agreed to pay for speed bumps for our street out of our budget. So with that, with them being offering to be able to pay for it, we're willing to pay for them. Can we then say, okay, NDOT is saying they will do 3, we will pay for the remaining 2? It's that bad that we're willing to go into our association fees that we pay so we can have safety on our street and have the speed tables versus
That'd
we
be
pay the difference.
never been asked that question, but the question is, could the homeowners association?
Metro at the time had approved that.
Okay. If I'm understanding the question for the people on the phone, just make sure I got it right. So if the NDOT traffic calming program is going to do something on Shagbark Trail, but the HOA is willing to pitch in money to do something different or more, is that the question?
That's the question.
Okay. And the answer is I do not know, but please let us talk internally at NDOT about this because I've never gotten asked that question, but it's a really creative and good question. So thank you. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely not questioning the seriousness, but when it comes to the different ways the money comes, I don't know, but we will. That's a good action item for us to go talk with.
Is there a reason why you're not going all the way down to the school?
When you say all the way down to the school, you mean on Shagbark Trail
Right.
on Ashford Trace? We received an application for Mountain View Road to Murphywood Crossing, so that was what was selected. So yeah, we usually take what the application is, and we usually don't change the limits, if that makes sense. So, and again, we can definitely have more Q&A and discussion. This is wonderful. And if people on the phone, definitely please post your questions in the chat, and then we can also make sure we get your questions and comments heard. We want to make sure we talk about the process. We're here at the first neighborhood meeting, some people in person here at the Southeast Community Center, some people calling in on WebEx. And then after this, we're going to go do some field work. You may see us out there in safety vests. We'd like to measure how wide the street is. We wear safety vests and we're careful, so we try. But we're going to prepare our design. That's going to be a lot more detailed. We may look at how many cushions. We may talk about cushions versus tables. That's something, we have a lot of action items coming out of this meeting.
That way you can get the feel of what it actually is like.
I think we may break some Metro policies if we do field work and don't wear our vest. So we will wear our safety vest. But we're going to prepare this design that's going to be more detailed and more zoomed in. Now, what we like to offer streets, because again, Ashford Trace and Shagbark Trail, we're kind of treating those 2 different designs. We like to offer 2 choices. Some streets, when we show them the concept design, we sometimes get the feedback that says like, that concept design looks great. We want to go ahead and do that. Sometimes they like to skip a second meeting. That's one choice. When we skip a second meeting, we'll prepare our final design, we'll get it ready, and then it will go to the online ballot where you get to vote on whether you want the traffic calming. The other choice you have is if we get feedback tonight from this meeting that, hey, you all are going to want to see the final design at a second meeting, we can make that decision tonight and we'll have a second meeting. It may be in 2 or 3 months or so. So we can kind of get some feedback at the end, but those are the 2 choices. We can have a second meeting or not. It's going to be up to you all. We're going to do whatever you all want us to do. I want to talk about this online ballot. I see Ensrud has raised a hand. I'm going to try to call on Ensrud. Do you have a question, Ensrud?
Yes. When are you guys planning to actually start the implementation of the plan? I'm just wondering if it's 2 months out, you guys won't get to see the school traffic.
So the question is, I think, when are we going to do our field work? Because we may not see the school traffic. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you for asking that question. Our site visit is not intended to observe or watch traffic. We have the data that shows they're speeding. We hear from you all. Our site visit is going to be more for like measuring the width of the road, how steep the road is, so we know if in each location if there should be 2 of those cushions or 3 of those cushions or 4. And then we want to make sure we understand as we're trying to space them apart. We want to make sure we can find spaces that we can place the speed cushions where we're not putting them in front of driveways. We don't put these things right in front of your driveways. We don't put them in the middle of intersections. So that's the purpose of our site visit, not really to observe the traffic itself. Does that kind of clarify a little bit? Okay.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So end of the meeting, we can decide whether there's a desire for a second meeting. We want to talk about this online ballot. The traffic calming program is unique in that the citizens, the neighborhood applies for something. We as the engineers work with you to prepare a design we're comfortable with on public streets, then ultimately you get to decide on whether this traffic calming project happens or not. And there'll be a vote. Asheford Trace and Shagbark Trail are going to be 2 separate projects, right? We're just meeting here because they're so close, but there'll be 2 separate votes. One vote could succeed and the other could fail, or both could succeed. So they're not lumped in as one big vote. They're 2 separate votes. But what we're going to do, and again, we will not do this until a final design is ready. And if there's a desire for a second meeting, we won't do this until the second meeting happens. But we will be sending to mailboxes the mailer ballots that will look similar to hopefully the mailer advertisements you got for this meeting. And they will be sent with the directions on how to go to the website, which will look like the bottom left corner of this slide, where you can put in your name, address, and your special unique ID code so we can make sure it's you. You will have an opportunity to vote, yes, I want this traffic calming design to get built, or no, I do not want this traffic calming design to get built. And this is in the future. This is not tomorrow, but yeah, one question was, can we vote right now? I love the passion. When that voting window does happen, we keep the voting window open for 6 weeks. And what we say is, of all the people that vote, are 2/3 of the people saying yes of those who vote. If it's 2/3 or more, that traffic calming project is going to happen. But if that 2/3 threshold is not met, then that traffic calming project will not happen. And again, Asheford Trace and Shagbark Trail are going to be 2 separate votes. So they're not tied to each other. We're just meeting here because we're so close. They're so close geographically. There will be like 2 separate designs with 2 separate votes. Asheford Trace people can't vote on the Shagbark Trail. Shagbark Trail people won't be able to vote on the Asheford Trace. Yeah, correct. So good question. So the only people that get the opportunity to vote are property owners if your property touches one of these streets. So Asheford Trace, if your mailbox is on and your driveway is on one of the side streets, but your side yard touches Asheford Trace, your property touches Asheford Trace, you'll be an eligible voter. Same for Shagbark Trail. If front yard, side yard, backyard, if you touch a street, you're an eligible voter. You are eligible to vote. So if you get a card, you're eligible, correct. I don't think there's many instances of this on Asheford Trace and Shagbark Trail. Yeah, so here's an example. This is sort of a picture of Asheford Trace, of kind of how many properties are adjacent to Asheford Trace. Businesses don't get a vote. Vacant properties, if there's ever any vacant properties where they don't get a vote. And then Shagbark Trail is here, fewer lots, but those are the eligible voters for who would get to vote, because that's the NDOT policy for traffic calming. And so that's the end of the presentation. We had lots of good discussion in Q&A. I want to make sure we get to the people on WebEx. I'm sorry we haven't figured out the audio, so I'll try to repeat the questions so everybody can hear. Dylan, I'm gonna ask my colleague, could you maybe run through some of the comments or questions you've gotten in the chat?
But
looks like Israel has a voting question.
Oh yeah, somebody on the WebEx has a voting question.
I do. This Inzru.
Yes, Inzru, yes.
I actually have two questions.
2 questions. Okay.
My first question is between Ashford Trace and Shagbark Trail, how are you going to pick which project goes first?
Between Ashford Trace and Shagbark Trail, I'm going to go to a map just because then I can see both roads at the same time. The question is between Ashford Trace and Shagbark Trail, how are we going to decide which project goes first?
Yes.
So we're hearing some comments in the room that Shagbark needs to go first. I think that may be people that live on Shagbark, but the reality is we are going to be working on both designs concurrently. We're going to have 2 designs that are separate, but we're going to be working when we do our field work, we're going to visit both on the same day. When we do our designs, we're going to be doing them the same. We don't have to, but if there's a desire for a second meeting, we may even have the second meeting with both streets together. That's not a requirement. So if there's a desire to have them separate. So to answer your question, I don't think they'll really be separated time-wise by much. The voting will be separate between the 2, but we're kind of prepared for Ashford Trace and Shagbark Trail to generally move at the same pace as each other. Does that answer your first question?
Yes. Move at the same pace. Okay.
Yes.
That's great.
And second question?
My second question is for the voting. Are all the homes eligible to vote? How do we know which ones are ineligible? So if we want to get out and canvass our neighbors and say,
Yes.
hey, make sure you vote because we need this 66%. How do we know?
So the question is, how do we know which properties are eligible to vote?
Yes.
That's the question. So are you able to see the screen that says ballot zone Ashford Trace? I just want to make sure the WebEx is coming through.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. But on Ashford Trace between Mountain View Road and Murphywood Crossing, if there's a residential property whose front yard, side yard, or backyard touches Ashford Trace, they will be eligible to vote. And that's kind of what we try to depict on this like picture on the left with all the yellow highlighted. Those would be the homes that are going to be eligible to vote. And then on Shagbark Trail, same idea, but between Ashford Trace and I'm already losing my steam, y'all. What's the street to the north? No, the street. I'm sorry. Summercrest. So, thank you. Summercrest Trail. Then every property or front yard, rear yard, side yard that touches Shagbark Trail in that section would be eligible to vote on Shagbark Trail. Does that kind of answer your second question?
Even if they're rentals?
So there's a question about rentals. There's a question about rentals. So the eligible voters are property owners. Yes. So for instance, if there is a renter in a property and the owner happens to live, say, out of state, the voting ballots are going to out of state. They're going to wherever that property owner address is.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the policy for Metro, but with the way that we're only looking at if the criteria is 2/3 of those who vote, if someone gets a ballot and doesn't do anything with it, it doesn't help or hurt the score. It's only looking at the yes or no's for those who actually vote, kind of like a normal election. So yeah, does that kind of answer your second question or third question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you. I want to pause. Any other questions from the people who are joining via WebEx? Then I'll come back to the in-person, just trying to juggle everything. Anything else from others?
We did have one more question.
Oh, Dylan says we had a question on the WebEx. It says, sorry, Dylan. I'll read it out loud. Just so there's a question on the WebEx. If the group votes to skip the second meeting, does that speed up the process of implementing the speed cushions? The answer is yes, a little bit. And the reason I'm going to go back to that graphic. So we're going to work on our design right here. And then one of the benefits of skipping a second meeting is that we can go then straight to an online ballot. It says 1 month. We may cut out 4 to 6 weeks by not scheduling it and sending out the mailer. I'm not trying to encourage you all to do that, but that is sort of the benefit for why some streets say, let's just skip that second meeting and then go here. Sometimes though, this meeting, there's enough like questions on the concept design we showed, or hey, sometimes the feedback is we might want to see kind of what you heard from our feedback and before we. So sometimes there's a desire to go ahead and some groups say, look, we want to have that second meeting still before the ballot. It's worth it. Each street's different. That's why I want to give the option and really go with however you all would like to go. I hope that answers the question on the WebEx. Yeah, good question. I'll come back to the group here. I'm going to try to focus on the people here at the Southeast Community Center. What are some other comments or questions? No, unfortunately, it is 8 to 10 months from the ballot. So there's good news and bad news, and then more good news. The good news is the traffic calming program is getting funded very well. A lot of streets are just like you all, and there's a lot of successful votes happening. So we're getting some safer streets. The bad news is it is loading up on the contractors, and their amount of work that they are getting loaded up to install speed cushions has been building up so much that we have been seeing some implementations after a ballot passes taking that long a time. I'm bookending it with more good news. NDOT has gotten more contractors on board for speed cushion installation. So every week that's going by, that time frame, that 8 to 10 months is decreasing. And it's because NDOT wanted these things installed quicker. They didn't feel like that was quick enough. And so that's why I wanted to say why that's there. But NDOT has gotten more contractors on to install them at a quicker pace. So that's really the best answer I can give you. But I wanted to give you that context for why, kind of what we're seeing on time frame. This is great. What other feedback?
What's your doing with the design concept?
So, no, thank you for asking that because I want to make sure I'm very clear. So yeah, when we go out and prepare our more final design, we're going to actually be more zoomed in. Our final design drawing will be more zoomed in. We'll be able to see that speed cushion is going to be 30 feet from the driveway at 31 or whatever, you know, very, very detailed and specific. If you skip the second meeting, then what will happen is we'll prepare the final design. Eventually it'll go up on the website, and then you all will get mailer ballots at some point. Usually we let the council member know and whoever applied for the traffic calming so they can kind of prepare people. But getting the mailer ballots and then going to the webpage to review the final design that you're voting on, that would be your next chance to see what the design looks like. So yeah, thank you for asking. I want to make sure we're clear. I'm going to try to go back. I know I'm kind of cycling through slides here. So if there's a desire to kind of get your eyes on that final design one more time to make sure it's kind of what we talked about, or if it's not, why, or maybe we need to, sometimes we need to make final little revisions to the final design sometimes between meeting two. Every once in a while that happens. That would be one of the things we could do. That would be one of the benefits of having a second meeting if there is a desire to kind of do that. Yeah, you have a question, yes.
This Metro money you said.
Yes, this is Metro Nashville money, yes.
Why can't we use some of the Joe Biden infrastructure money on this project like they're doing in other parts of the city?
Yeah, why can we not use the Joe Biden infrastructure money on this traffic calming program? Is that your question? I honestly don't know. That's a good question. I apologize, sir. I don't have an answer for you. It's something I can ask some of our colleagues at NDOT. I don't know, but I do know the traffic calming program, it is funded, and it is funded by Metro Nashville local dollars. But I'm gonna have to ask a question though. Yeah, thank you for asking that.
The money was coming in from we have paid out.
Get another question.
That was what you said, that it was in the minutes some time ago from Summerfield, that they had agreed to pay for some of it, but
Gotcha.
he's going to pay for it. So, you know.
Gotcha. So let's talk about, is there a desire to go ahead and plan on having a second meeting? I'm seeing some yeses, and yeah, that was the question, and we're seeing some yeses. Seeing yeses, and generally, even if there's a few yeses, we want to make sure people get the chance to see it and hear it. So I think we're going to go ahead and plan on having a second meeting is what we're going to do, just because we have heard a lot of feedback. Again, I think the concept designs, I think we're on the right, my sense from what I've heard is we're on the right track here, but maybe we need to when we're doing our measurements, take a closer look at some things. And so that is also an indication that a second meeting would be good. So if we are able to address some of the comments, we can talk about that. And if we cannot, we can also talk about that. Again, sometimes we go through these and the feedback is like, yes, that's what we want. Let's vote on that. So that's sometimes where we see skipping the second meeting. Let's plan on having the second meeting. That's great. Yeah, any other questions? We're here as long as you all would like. I'll pause and say, have there been any more WebEx, either questions in the chat, Dylan, or if anybody wants to come off of mute on the WebEx?
No questions, but it was just wanted to see the second slide.
Excellent. So yeah, there was a question to see the design slide. So here's Ashford Trace, then I'll just flip over to Shagbark Trail in case that comment was geared more towards Shagbark Trail. So just to make sure we got it right, we're taking some notes, but probably think 3 locations total is the right number. We may look at more. I'm not saying it's definitely going to be 3, but probably thinking 3. Here, I think we've heard feedback that maybe instead of 2, perhaps 3. I'm seeing a 5. I don't know if we're going to get 5. I'm hearing some 4s. Hearing lots of 4s, not going to promise anything, but I think we can probably bank on not having 2 and having more than 2. Ashford Trace, yes.
I have a question.
Yeah, so one moment on the phone, please. But yeah, the question is on Ashford Trace, 3 versus 4 locations. We'll take a look at it. I'll be very honest. We're not locked into 3 locations. We may get out there and do our measurements. I think Carlos and Dylan, we've done this before where we've gone in, and then when we look at more of a design, we realize sometimes adding a 1 is appropriate. So we truly don't know. We may come with the final design.
3 initially right now.
Yeah, 3 for Ashford Trace is what we proposed. Maybe it'll be 3. Maybe we may find a spot for an extra 1, but we have to look into it. Just like Shagbark Trail, we proposed 2. Kind of seems like we're on a track to maybe do at least 3. I've heard the feedback for 4 or 5. We are the engineers. So we may have an engineer. That's where the second meeting is going to be valuable, because if we come in at 3 and you're wanting 4 or 5, we want to have the chance to like explain why. But we may get out there and see that like 4 or 5 is the right answer, and we may design 4 or 5. We truly don't know. That's where I'm trying to be very like, we haven't done our measurements yet. It is a long street. Okay. Okay. Okay, yeah, that's something we can talk about. Usually cushions are what NDOT likes to do, but hearing the feedback for speed tables to be considered, that's another action item we'll also take to talk about speed tables as an option. Another reason why meeting 2 would be a good idea. So if we're not proposing tables, we can talk through why, or if we are, then great. Okay. Yeah. And
I love it. Don't get it out. I get paid for it.
So there's a street you've gone over that. What street was it? Dover Glen. Dover Glen is a street that has these. Okay. So yeah, so that's a good. I don't know what they look like, but I like to make sure people know about Dover Glen, so if people want to drive over them, they can see what they're like. So that's very good. Right. Yes. So there is a question to see what the speed table looks like. I know we've been talking about it here. Someone on WebEx wanted to see what the speed table looked like. But yeah, that's what they look like.
Oh, okay.
Car just jump those, the other ones jump them sideways. That's what it do with my truck that I drive now.
Are you-
So with those, I see people just buy.
So there's a comment in the room. Are you saying you've seen people actually get air and jump on the speed tables? Really? Well, that's too dangerous. I'm sorry. Wow.
The whole thing is dangerous. That's the point. They don't care,
That's very sad.
What about putting cameras to send tickets to these people flying?
Yeah. So the question is, could cameras be set up to write speeding tickets? Yeah. I like the idea. Not a part of the traffic calming program, but I do like that idea. Close the road back up.
Maybe we can get with the association.
Right. Yeah, and another question is asking about the HOA association. That was we have not been asked that question before. That's a really good creative idea. We want to ask NDOT.
Because I think that we can see the room and see we don't have a problem with.
Right.
We have the funds to do it in our budget savings, in our association. So if that means that we would have to put the bill for an additional one, or what the cost would be for the speed tables versus, we would have a lot of pushback from the residents there.
Okay, no, that's a very, yeah, I was caught off guard because I haven't been offered that, but that's really creative. So yeah, that's another thing we want to talk about with NDOT to see if it's feasible. With those things, we're usually the engineers who are designing it, but we want to get that comment or thought to the right person.
Speed signs out there now? Any?
Well, we're gonna see if we can do some speed cushions instead of the speed signs. Oh yeah, for a design.
Is that the highest that they go? 3 feet?
3 inches, yes, that is the highest. At some point, I don't know the magic height, but there is a height where you're getting too high up off the ground where cars could be bottoming out. And so that's where I think 3 inches has been determined by the company that makes these. So yes, you have a question.
They get damaged. We will report it to 311.
Yeah, so that's a good question. If they get damaged, would you report it to the hub Nashville? So if there is a successful vote, and then if vertical measures like cushions or tables get installed, and then if they do get damaged, then you would report damage to those through hub Nashville. It'd be like any other Metro Nashville, a pothole or a damaged anything, and that's where Metro Nashville would be responsible for doing it. So that is how that happens. Yeah.
Really, any restriction on how far apart they have to be in between one another?
So the question is, is there a restriction on how far apart they have to be? So I would say normally when we're designing the vertical measures, whether it's cushions or tables, we're usually looking at a spacing between 300 feet and 500 feet. So usually 400 feet is usually kind of where we look. And then depending on, we don't want to put in front of people's driveways. So sometimes we have to kind of get a little less than 400. Since we got to get a little more. That's sort of from some national guidance in Metro Nashville. So we usually don't put them, for instance, 100 feet apart. That's where we start feeling like a grocery store parking lot. But like 600, 700 feet, that gives people a chance to catch speed if they want to. We don't want to do that. So it's usually 300 to 500 feet. And sometimes I'm going to go back real quick because we've had some really good feedback. I'm not sure what the spacing is between on Shagbark from Asheford stop sign to that cushion, but we may move that a little closer. So we do sometimes try to move the first cushion closer to a stop sign because if they're whipping around, starting to come. We're not going to put one right at the stop sign, no. But we do want to put it, within 150 feet or so of the stop sign. So as they turn and they start picking up speed, then they get their first speed cushion. That is something we do look at. That's wild. And and we showed the speed data. You're saying you got 18 wheelers going down your street. What? Why are they? Is it because
our street is now the thoroughfare to transition?
Figured out that there's no stop sign between when you open up Morningside Drive and
Yeah.
So So once they turn, there's no lights, there's no stopping,
Right.
that traffic.
Right.
So yeah, they have figured out we're a thoroughfare to skip from Murfreesboro Road to Mount View very quickly.
Yeah, I think the feedback on the WebEx is just what we were just talking about. And I even heard that you're seeing some school buses go a little, oh my. Oh, wow. They come from Murfreesboro Road.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, gotcha. So I want to come back. Did that answer your question on like the normal, how we look at the spacing of the, okay. I want to make sure I got, and then I'm sorry, did you have a question as well? Near Cane Ridge High School, another Cane Ridge Elementary. Mm-hmm.
They're gonna open up that, it's gonna be a roundabout, which will bring traffic from Old Hickory Boulevard
Oh,
to the subdivision. But they'll be flying through there because that'll be a quicker way.
oh. So a new roundabout project may even bring more traffic to the neighborhood streets. Okay.
Say get shut down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Oh, okay.
Excellent. Well, I think our takeaways, we have taken lots of notes. We are going to have a second meeting, so we're going to be preparing that final design. Ultimately, we'll reach out to your, I think your council member Stiles, I believe, is who scheduled the meeting. And I'm not sure, we reached out to the applicant. I'm not sure who it was, but we never got a response. That's why. So that's what we want to, before we can end the meeting and stop the recording, but before someone leaves, we'd love to get a new contact because this was chosen in August and we're just having the first meeting because we were reaching out to someone and we never heard back. Yeah. And so that's why Councilmember Stiles finally set this up. So here we are. But before we would be great to get a new, so it would be great to get a new contact. So when our design is ready, we can reach out to someone and get that second meeting scheduled really quickly. That's what we'd like to do. So we can do that after the recording and after the meeting. Anybody else on the WebEx that have any questions? Dylan, are there any other questions from the chat? Okay, anybody else on the WebEx? We want to make sure we don't cut anybody short. Okay, not hearing anybody. Any other questions or comments from this group? This has been great. I'm going to go back to the 3 E's. Like, this education has been great. We feel like we're the engineers, but you are the experts of your street. We're so grateful to be working with you to try to find a solution to just lower these vehicle speeds. So thank you all. Thank you all. Let me stop recording.